My subject is going to be, as you've heard, the United Nations International Year of Glass. It's not just on the 26th January, that's today's date, it's the whole of the year. I'm not just involved in the regional aspects, I'm very much involved in the international aspects. And some of these slides are taken from things that have arisen in that context, as you'll see. This international year really goes back something like 5 years. And a lot of people were thinking, we often look through glass, optical fibers, eyeglasses, whatever, even windows and so on. We don't notice it's there. And we thought it was about time to actually sell the subject and say what a fantastic material it is and how much it's done for society. Specifically, in 2015, it was the United Nations International Year of Light. And of course, light and glass go very much hand in hand. And Professor Pai, who's at Alfred University in the United States, edits a journal out there. And he proposed having a journal issue as part of the International Year of Light that talked about the role of glass. And that was the starting point. And the article that was written really started a ball rolling. Okay, it sparked lots of ideas. And those ideas really are illustrated in this slide. Archaeologists have always talked in terms of the Stone Age and the Bronze Age and the Iron Age. And people were saying, well, could we really think of the present age as being the Glass Age? And take out your mobile phones. What do you look at? A sheet of glass. Think of how your telephone signal arises and it comes on a glass fiber. But of course, simply calling it the Glass Age doesn't give you a simple way of celebrating it. So from the idea of the Glass Age, people then started saying, well, shouldn't we have a United Nations International Year of Glass? But then the question is, how do you go about that? Well, one of the things that a lot of people have done when they've had international years have been to celebrate important birthdays. And so one of the things that people did was to think, well, what important birthdays do we have to celebrate to do with glass? There are 3 here in red, which are nice round numbers. It's 100 years of the German Society of Glass Technology, which is a little bit specific, not quite international, but they have planned to do a major conference as part of their celebrations, and that's going to attract an audience of a few hundred, certainly. It's 100 years since King Tutankhamun's tomb was opened in Egypt, and glass was discovered in the tomb. So 2 nice centenaries there. And we've organized 2 big international conferences associated with those 2 events. But then people started searching and discovered other things. And lighthouses have very large lenses. They're what are called Fresnel lenses. Rather than try and make a single lens several feet across, it's done using cylinders of glass shaped to make a lens, and there's some fairly clever optics behind it. Okay, 200 years of saving people's lives. So there we've got 3 good anniversaries to celebrate, but we went on further. 670 years. Now, who found this out? I do not know. 670 years since the first painting with eyeglasses on it. But of course, the point is that the use of glass for lenses, goes back to the monks in particular, who were creating illuminated Bibles, and they were doing it the whole day, day after day, and so on, for their lives. These things were a life's work. And having lenses was really important. 70 years since Pilkington's patent on float glass. You think how much flat glass has been made using the Pilkington technology in that 70 years. 60 years since the studio glass movement in America, which has spread throughout the world. And we've even got a Nobel Prize on the list, which was the 45th anniversary of looking at glassy materials that underpin things like photocopying, xerography. Okay, probably most of you haven't realized that certainly the early technologies were using glassy materials. We didn't know this when we started talking about it 2 or 3 years ago, but this year's Physics Nobel Prize is also someone who's looked at glassy materials. So, I could have put in first anniversary, but, well, it would actually be at 6 months anniversary. So that's not on the list. But that isn't what the United Nations wanted from us. Basically, they have a set of aspirations which they hope to achieve, they hope society to achieve by 2030. You can't see all of them on this. It's very easy to find them on the web, but you can see what some of them are. We've got number 1, aspiration, no poverty. 2, zero hunger, very similar. Clean water and sanitation, life on land, life below water, climate action. Some of these things you'll recognize as very important to glass people. And we had to write our documentation to show how glass could help solve these kind of things. Now, if you're interested at all, the documentation is available for download online. And we created a very good 30-minute film, Corning did. Really good for showing at schools level, that kind of thing. So do have a look after this lecture. I'm sure you'll all be desperate to rush out and look at the website to find it. But the approach we had, as I said, was to look at the United Nations Development Goals and to see how glass could fit in with at least some, hopefully all, but certainly some of these goals. And that's how I'm going to structure the rest of the talk. Okay. We have produced a book as well as the video that I mentioned. The book, COVID got in the way of a lot of this. It really, we didn't know until end of May last year that we got the approval of the UN. And it isn't long enough to organize a year's worth of events. But one of the things we've done is to create a book. And many of the chapters in this book are being converted into displays that will at some point in the year become available for wider use. Okay. Here's the cover of the book called Welcome to the Glass Age. It's been published in Spain in English, and it's going to be available for the opening ceremony, which is happening in 3 weeks' time in Geneva, in the United Nations facilities there. It's certainly going to be translated into Spanish. So if there are any Spanish speakers here, you will be able to get hold of it in Spanish. But we are hoping it'll be translated much more widely, because the goal of this book is to interest 18-year-olds, young people, in the subject of glass. They are the future developing ideas. It's not, or at least the aim in principle was not to excite. No, I shouldn't say this, people of your age. Oh dear. Sorry. Yeah, okay. There are a few of you, I'm sure. Okay. No, it's going to be available online to download, and we are hoping that it will be an international book, which will excite people in the glass field. Okay, I have to say, having had to read through all 13 chapters, that some manage better than others at achieving an 18-year-old audience. And we've had to do it in 5 months, which has been far too short. But it's a worthy book. It certainly goes some way to achieving our aim. And here's a list of the chapters. We've got a little bit on glass history, affordable and clean energy, optical fibers, architecture, sustainable production, glass art, museums, education, equality. I mean, some of these things are not the obvious things for this audience tonight, but I will come back to them. And there's a concluding chapter, which is really where is glass research going. It's a very short chapter. Yeah, okay. Right, so all of those chapters took the UN goals and talked about glass in the context of those UN goals. So the chapter headings are not the goals themselves. I'm going to structure this lecture around the goals, but the material I'm talking about comes in different chapters. So this is one of the really nice ones to talk about, good health and well-being. Okay, and I've already mentioned lenses. Okay, they go back 670 years. I'm sure you all remembered that figure, didn't you? Okay, good, right, okay. So one of the early applications of glass in good health and well-being. What next? Well, next we had the alchemists. I always feel that the alchemists got rather a bad press. You know, people always talk about them trying to convert lead to gold. But I think their interests were much wider than that. They were very keen on herbal medicines and so on. And they got involved in distilling things, whatever, for which they needed glass equipment. And here's a picture of some of the early glass equipment they were making hundreds of years ago. The basis of our chemistry, modern chemistry. Okay, I mean, you can recognize some of these perhaps from schoolboy days, but you can see distillation equipment, you can see containers, you can see all sorts of funny shapes, but yeah. Now, I'm going to bring it right forward now to the modern day by showing you some teeth. This was something I got involved in myself about 40 years ago, because fillings in teeth 40 or 50 years ago were mercury amalgams, and you don't really see them when they're in back teeth, but if you're filling front teeth, they don't look particularly nice, and not everyone can afford to have a gold filling. One of the ideas was to take a very specific glass composition, which when it goes into an acid, you get a reaction and you form a cement, and you can use it for filling teeth. So there we have an application of glass in filling teeth. If you look at some of the sorry, no, that's coming up in a minute. Sorry. Okay, So there you have your metal filling. Here you have teeth. It's the same teeth, but I think they've been refilled with some asper cement. You don't see the filling anymore. So a use of glass in dentistry. But then people started thinking about other uses in dentistry. Now, there we have a very commonly used toothpaste. And there is, if you look at the contents list, you won't see the word glass mentioned, but you'll see something which is the name of a mineral, and that's the glassy component. And it's not there as an abrasive material, you might think. It's actually there because, like the dental cement, it's slightly soluble in water. You get some leaching of things out of the cement into your mouth. And what leaches out is some fluoride. And you all know about the advantages of fluoride. It helps strengthen your teeth. And what these pictures here are showing you, these are some pictures at very high magnification. I ought to make it clear that these are not holes in your teeth, not on this scale. Okay, this is what happens over time, and this is the cause of whenever you have something extremely hot or something extremely cold, you get nasty tingling sensation in your mouth. And acids and things can do the same. It's because basically the material that you're drinking or eating goes through these holes in the enamel into the dentine where the nerves are and sets off a reaction. Now what the fluoride does is to help fill in those holes, and these images just here are showing the holes getting smaller with the use of this material. So that's a second application of glass in dentistry. There is another, which I haven't got a picture for, but that is if you lose a tooth. There's a firm in Liechtenstein, particularly, very good at doing this, at creating a glass ceramic tooth that matches the rest of your teeth in color and appearance very well. I say it's a glass ceramic. It starts off life as a glass, but it's then heated and it crystallizes on a very fine scale, rather like the white opals that you're probably all familiar with. And it looks like a tooth. Okay, so 3 uses of glass in dentistry. But what else can we do? Well, the picture on the left here arises actually from the Vietnamese War. The person who started all this off talked to various generals after the Vietnamese War and said, he's talking just generally. I think it was on a bus journey somewhere, just chatting away. What are the problems that your soldiers returning from Vietnam are suffering from? And it turned out that the big problem was not things like the mental anguish they'd been through. It was actually shattered bones that wouldn't heal. The effect of bombs and so on had shattered their bones into very small amounts, and they just simply wouldn't heal by natural means. Now, what they discovered was they put a glass into 1 or 2 of these wounds related to the kind of things they were doing with teeth. It leached out materials and it started the natural healing behavior of the body. It triggered that happening. And when they first did this, 11 weeks, they opened the person up to see what had happened, and they could not get this stuff out. It was stuck so well to the existing bones. Now, that was the first go at doing it, and it was absolutely amazing how effective it was. And this picture here is now of commercially available material, which can be used for that kind of application. But they've discovered other things where you can do things, the same kind of idea. One of them is to use it to heal diabetic sores on people's feet. Now, who thought when they came here tonight and they were going to listen to me talking about glass, that I would end up talking about diabetic sores? No. Okay. One more picture on the right. Anaphylactic shock. Now, that's not me shouting loudly at you. It's people who suffer from things like a bee sting, which sets off an immune reaction. You have to work very quickly to solve that by injecting something into their bloodstream. And that's what this device does. Basically, you just jam it as quick as you can, goes through your clothing. There's a needle that goes through into the body and injects the required material to cure the problem. Okay. Of course, the liquid that is the medication has to be safe in its container until you do that final step. And early ones used a glass boundary layer, which would occasionally break. And that meant that you didn't know whether the device would always work. Occasionally it didn't, it failed. What they did was discover a way of strengthening it so that the success rate is basically 100%. It always works. Okay, I thought, given what the last 2 years have brought us, I ought just to add one more thing. That's the picture just down here, which is a COVID vaccination file. Glass is everywhere in it can be in lots of different areas of medicine and dentistry. Climate action, another one of these UN goals. And of course, when you think of glass, you think of furnaces. And I have to say that furnaces like this are not very good from a climate point of view. There's a whole chapter of this on the book that I mentioned to you. And the book starts by saying, well, it gives some statistics over the years. And one of the things that's really interesting is how well the glass industry has done over the millennia, shall we say. If you go back a few hundred years, it took tens of tons of wood to make 1 ton of glass. If you now look at the efficiency of a modern glass furnace, it's more like 1/10 of a ton of fuel for a ton of glass. An improvement of 100 or more. In fact, the person who wrote the article claimed it was an improvement of 500 times. The glass industry has done very well at reducing its carbon footprint. Or you have to say that 500 years ago, it did very badly. Right. This article talks about trying to improve the furnace. And really, it argues that we've just about got as far as we can do. So what else is there left to do? Well, the other source of energy, of course, is green electricity. And we have someone sitting on the front here who could be giving this part of the talk. But we've got green electricity and electric melting of the furnaces. Electric melting furnaces. And the argument is that's certainly one way to go. There are inevitably some difficulties. Nothing is ever straightforward. The problem with electric furnaces is size. I think over the last few decades, there have been some very large electric furnaces built, but on the whole, they're around a few tens of tons, whereas Pilkington's float tanks are 1,000 tons per day output. The difficulty is the larger you make your electric furnace, the more the tendency is to have part of the surface free of the glass batch, and that causes heat loss problems. Okay, well, I won't say anything more than that. There are some other difficulties like control of redox and color. And again, that's all I'm going to say. But the electric furnace is a very good way forward. And I think the argument of the presented in the paper is that it's certainly one of the things that's going to help. And if you use totally green electricity, then you have basically a zero carbon footprint, which is great. The other difficulty that electric furnaces have is that electricity is very difficult to store. So if you have a power cut, you have a problem. So, okay, there is another way of doing it, which also has its problems, but that's to use hydrogen instead of a carbon-based fuel like oil or natural gas. The hydrogen has to be generated from somewhere. You're probably going to use electricity to make it. So, but hydrogen in principle can be stored in geological sites, big spaces under the ground. At least in principle, it can be stored, and people are doing it. So the argument presented is that a combination of hydrogen as a fuel and using electricity and so on, both of which come ultimately from electricity, and it has to be green electricity if you're going to have a zero carbon footprint. So I'll come back to green electricity in just a minute. In fact, I'll tell you what, I'm going to miss this slide. I'm going to go on to the next one, because how are we going to make our electricity with a zero carbon footprint? Well, I've got 4 or 5 images here of different ways of doing it. This is a picture, I think it's in China, but there's something very similar in Morocco. And all of these things here are mirrors. And they're all focused on this tower in the center. And they're all focused on the top of that tower. There are a lot of mirrors there. This tower gets incredibly hot. What do you think I mean by incredibly hot? 150? 850. Getting a bit closer. A bit more than 3,000? 5,000. That's right. That's hot. You can do a lot of things at 5,000 centigrade, which allow you to store the energy that you've created during the daytime. I mean, so many green solutions rely on the sun, and therefore it's only half the day. But this is a technology that is at the research stage at the moment, but lets you store energy by creating, by using the high temperature to create new chemicals and so on. Of course, you can use solar cells. And solar cells, like the mirrors, are made from glass. And this is the link to the glass. And this is a desert full of solar cells. Deserts tend not to be very useful for other things. And there's an awful lot of solar cells there generating an awful lot of electricity. Windmills. See a lot of those around in the UK. The blades are fiberglass reinforced plastics. Sorry, I shouldn't mention, sorry. Just avoid the bricks and so on. But there's a high proportion of glass in those turbine blades. And interestingly, the bigger the blades, the longer the blades, the more efficient the windmill is. But to make the blades longer, you need glasses with new elastic properties. And there's been a lot of research gone on into developing the glass fibers for this process. It's not, you can't automatically take the old technologies and use them. I mean, you can, but you won't do so well. You have to develop them. Right. Now, there is another way. Wind doesn't happen all the time. The sun's not there all the time. So what the electricity companies are looking at is using nuclear energy as another way. And what does that have to do with glass? Well, nuclear power generates waste. And one way of getting rid of the waste is by dissolving it into a glassy matrix, making glass out of it, which can then be stored for very long periods. And it's a subject that we could debate all night. But what the picture shows here is some of the tanks which are currently storing nuclear waste. There's quite a lot of it around, but we're getting to the point where glass is the preferred medium for storage, and hence these tanks can be emptied and converted into glass. One last picture. Biofuels. Okay, glass tubes in which we're using sunlight to develop biofuels. So in terms of energy, we've got 5 uses of glass here, making clean energy. And we've also got glass bottle makers and sheet glass makers using that electricity to make their glass things in a low carbon way. Now, how are we doing for time? Not too bad, I think. Another requirement, quality education. Why have I shown this? It's actually from a film that was made a few years ago, where the film was about a town in Czech Republic area, glassmaking area, where they had for a long time made things like this. And the person who was the expert in the factory he died, and they lost the technology for doing it. He didn't pass it on. He failed to educate the next generation. And the film is all about the disaster that meant for the community. And these days, the UNESCO is looking very much at trying to preserve some of these old technologies. One of those on the endangered species list in the UK is the ability to make glass eyes. Okay, but there's a film about this. And the point I want to make is that education is about teaching. It can be about teaching the ways of doing things, the skills of making it. It can be about the understanding of the chemistry that's involved in making things like the red glass on the surface of this cup. Okay, so there are many aspects to education. You've got people writing things, storage of information in that way. You've got people teaching it, and so on. Now, just very quickly, ICG, the International Commission on Glass, has been running schools. Now, I have to say these schools are very much for research students, okay, but we've been doing this for about 12 years now. We run schools in every summer in the south of France. We have run for ones in the last 5 years in Wuhan. I don't think it was me that brought COVID back to the UK, but I hope not. And we've run 2 or 3 in India as well. And we have an interesting philosophy. We don't spend a week teaching. We spend half a week teaching, and we spend half a week with the students doing projects, so they have to work in teams, and they form incredibly close bonds, which then, things like Facebook and so on, they keep these bonds as they go through their PhDs and that kind of thing. So we're looking at new ways of education like this. We've produced a book. And when it comes to the International Year of Glass, we have a group in South America who are producing comics, which are aimed at 12-year-olds. The people in India have produced a competition in which they got quite young people writing their own experience of glass. So education is a significant part of our goals for this year of glass. And I hope, and I think all of us hope, that although it's concentrated, the effort is concentrated in 1 year, we very much hope and intend that all of the interactions will continue for long after this year. Now, another slightly surprising one, perhaps, gender equality. This picture was taken at a glass conference where there were about 400 or 300 people. And it turned out that of the 300 people, they had something like 50 people who were the keynote lecturers, the really good people at speaking. And of those 50, about 5 were female. And those females were represented in the conference by about 70, not half the group, but by, there were far more people at the conference who were female than were giving talks. And they had a sit-in after one of the dinners. Can you imagine glass technologists having a sit-in in a conference? I don't know. And there they had a photograph taken. It was all very gentle. But it's one of the issues that is part of the story of in the book. Now, this is a picture of a female glass artist. The artists have suffered in a different way because there's been a general perception that female glass artists can't blow glass. It's too hard. Here we have a female glass artist blowing glass. There are some very good female glass blowers. Right. If you look at the chapters that I told you about in our book, the reason why some are in red is because they're the females who've written. And again, a deliberate policy has been the hope was we would get 50-50. We haven't quite done that. But 8 of these authors for 13 chapters are female. Okay. All part of the UN story. Optical fibers, we're almost there. Do you mind if I continue a little bit longer? No, good, okay, right. I have a friend who's Nigerian, and I said to him, How many females in Nigeria have mobile phones? How many do you think? 30 million. Is that sort of the whole population you're saying, basically? I'm not sure how big Nigeria is. I think 90. So it's a third of the females. Sorry, it'll be 2/3 of the females, won't it? Well, not too bad a guess. Every female, according to my contacts, says that each female has 2 mobile phones. And it's partly because the companies out there are not very reliable, you know, and they can switch to a different one. I suspect it's more to do with one phone that their husband knows about. I wonder. Okay. Mobile phones. The signals all go along optical fibers. And of course, the screen on the mobile phone is glass. It's a vital part of the technology. And it has made an enormous difference, not only in the UK, not only in rich countries, but it's made at least a bigger difference in poor countries. Because if you're in an African country and a shop suddenly got a supply of a food product you needed, the only way you could find out was by walking there to see. But with a mobile phone, you can be told straight away. And glass has had a dramatic influence that even more than we realize, I think, in the UK. Now, glass fibers, 2 glasses, a core and a cladding. You all, I guess, know the idea. Light is guided along this center bit, and you use the light to carry the information. Just like we use radio waves, you're using a light beam to do just the same. The trouble is, our appetite for information is growing at an incredible rate. Now, if you're sitting in a pub and you're doing a quiz and you want to know the answer to something, now I'm sure none of you turn to your phone to find the answer, do you? No. Yeah. Okay, but you know what I mean. Your phone is information in your hand. It's amazing. And the amount of information traveling on optical fibers is increasing. I'm not sure, is it 50% every? It's quite dramatic, 50% a year, something like that. Research scientists are having to find ways of getting more and more information down these fibers. Now, you're also sending fibers across the Atlantic. It's a long way for a light signal to go. You need amplifiers. And again, scientists are working on doing it using glass. Now, the kind of tricks that they use are to put in some of the rare earth elements, the things that get you 0 points when it comes to listening to Pointless on television. Okay, things like erbium, whatever. You put that into here, and it absorbs light at a certain wavelength, and you can actually make that bit of fiber with that bit of erbium in it. You can make it into a laser, which, I mean, a laser is basically an amplifier. You put in a weak signal, and out at the other end comes a strong signal. Okay. Interesting story about the word laser. Light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation, the radiation being light. It uses the oscillation of light backwards and forwards in the fiber. But the idea of calling it light oscillation using stimulated emission of radiation, have you all got it? It wasn't regarded as a particularly good name for something. Things like that are going on. Amplifiers which don't require electricity in the same way. You can do it in the fiber. Now, then you have to design that so that it works not just at one wavelength, but works at 20 or 30 wavelengths so that you can get 20 or 30 signals. And not, you don't just have one encoded signal, you've suddenly got 20 times as much by doing that. Exciting things going on in the glass field. I think this is the last one. A very important part of the argument we put to the UN was glass recycling, developing circular economies. Okay. I don't think I need to say a lot about that. I'm sure you're all aware of it. Let's just talk about this one, and then I'll stop. We've all seen the kind of films that Dimbleby has produced on television, talking about the disaster that we're facing in our oceans. Unfortunately, broken glass gets into the oceans as well. But the tumbling action of waves on glass produces something like this. And if you type in sea glass into Google, you will find hundreds upon hundreds of images of beautiful jewelry made out of waste glass that should have gone back into the factory. For me, that's really amazing. And my wife, you know, I've bought the occasional thing for you, haven't I, Mary? Okay. Right. Let's just conclude quickly. For the International Year of Glass, we've created 18 different regional organizations. We've got something like 90 countries on board. We've put those into 18 groups. There's a UK stroke Ireland, and of course Wales and Scotland are part of the UK. We've got a good representation now, who are helping to oversee events and to organize events. We do have a list which is on the IOG website, and I have to apologize that the IOG website is not as good as it should be. Time is, unfortunately, yeah, there are too many things to do, basically, putting it simply. But you can find there's a list of events that are happening. You can look at everything that's been typed in so far. You can filter it and look at things by country. You can look at things according to whether it's museums or research or scientific conferences. There are a lot of filters you can apply. The list's already quite long. It'll get an awful lot longer. We're looking at, we hope, thousands of events happening. We really are, apart from the regional organizations, we've set up quite a lot of groups to look at things like museums, to look at things like art, to look at working with young people and so on. And basically, that's where I'm going to finish. But I'll just say thank you very much for listening, and I'm open to questions. Yes, Richard.
Can I ask the date, please, of the international launch in Europe?
Right. Yes, that's a very good question. The Date of the launch is the 10th and 11th of February. Okay, it's in Geneva, and there are very strict COVID restrictions on how many people can attend. We do have one of the speakers here tonight. Very nice to see you, Andy. Okay, we have 30 very eminent speakers. Some are going to be at the scientific end of the spectrum. Some are going to be at the architectural and art. No, we're going to cover the whole area. Okay. It is going to be streamed, and it is going to be recorded, so you can look at it, even though you're not there. Now, we are on the cusp of launching a site for the opening ceremony. It may even be there today. One of my jobs 2 nights ago was to go through and proofread it all for someone. But there you'll find a link that you can join. Okay. So, thank you very much for asking the question, Richard.
Can I just say a wonderful explanation about this? Thank you, seriously. It's really tremendous.
It's an exciting subject.
I agree with you.
Right.
Andy, you had a question.
What do you do? So, what do you do the rest of the week when you're not being, IOG man?
There isn't the rest of the week.
Well, if you want an honest answer to that, one of the things I do is to try and keep fit. And every day I try to have about an hour walking. And one of the things that I do when I walk is to think about what I'm going to say at lectures like this.
It's really more of a comment, but you honed in on education being so important.
Yeah.
And so I hope that we're going to promote the fact that the glass fellows in our way do quite a lot in glass in society by having projects in schools all on glass, and some of them are
Yes.
really creative. And I hope that they get promoted to another level so that people abroad know what is going on in schools and countries.
Right. Richard's been telling me about some of this. I don't know enough, but following on really on what was just said, I can't do everything by any means. So you basically, groups like you need to think of imaginative ways of doing things. And one of the things that I've been talking I can't see the person I spoke to, must be here somewhere. You have your Glass Sellers Prize. We had a conversation about the possibility of making it an international prize, therefore advertising it internationally. And the alternative is advertising it locally. But then getting people to talk over Zoom, and have a competition where 3 or 4 people present their case.
We might have schools competitions.
Well, schools, yep.
Unfortunately, we haven't got the chairman of the charity committee here.
Right.
But, sorry? Yes, please, Paul.
Yeah.
I've started on as a trustee.
Yeah.
You could explain.
We're in dialogue at the moment with one of the primary school associations, and we're in the verge of launching a project to bring glass back into the classroom.
Right.
And
Yeah.
this will start off with schools applying for kits to do glass work in their classrooms. And then from there, it will build on to a inter-school competition. The people we're working with, it will cover some, I think it's about 16,000 schools on the primary level in this country.
Right.
Including Ireland and Scotland and Wales.
Right. Yes.
We're hoping that we'll be able to launch it realistically towards the end of March, but in reality it'll probably be April, May.
Yeah.
And then that not only having instigated it, we foresee it actually being rolled over year on year, on and on. So it won't be just for this year, but it's the biggest undertaking that the Glass Sellers Charity Fund has actually ever done, complementing its already established Glass and Society project. It is working with a national organisation to do this, and it will be announced at the court in March.
I think it's a fantastic idea. Strangely, Mary and I go into a primary school, or we have done in the past. COVID's put a stop to it, but we used to go into a primary school and teach reading 1 morning a week. Now, we did an experiment, and we took them along to the Turner Museum of Glass, the whole school, just to have a look round. It wasn't entirely successful. It's very difficult communicating things like glass to young people. But it wasn't a disaster either, by any means. And you might find first time you do it, it's not worked quite as well as it might. It's gaining experience, isn't it? It's passing the word around. It's telling everyone what your experience is. And I know other countries are thinking in the same way. So there are people that I think IOG can put you in touch with so that you can share your ideas and think of the best ways of doing it. And the Americans certainly are doing it. Yes.
Can I just say that the Glass Sellers have been these school projects for the last dozen years, and every year they have been an absolute success with the children using the science of glass to make something. And there is a reference.
Right, that's fantastic.
We don't
Yeah.
have to invent it. We don't have to start anything.
No.
We have an action group that have been doing it through the charity.
Right. So on the IOG website, there's a place where you can type in this kind of information so that it can then be shared throughout the world.
That's perfect, because the book will be ideal for the staff in the primary school, because a lot of the staff don't know how to teach it. And that's one of the things that the charity committee have been working on with the national body. So that would be absolutely perfect. And certainly the posters that you've developed, the schools to download those would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes, but shall we start with Steve and then Mark, please?
John, could I mention that the Glass Manufacturers Education Trust, the trustees have voted and agreed to launch an international competition called the David Whitehouse Portland Vase Mystery.
Oh, right.
And we are seeking from all over the world. We've made contact with Corning Museum of Glass.
Right.
And Amy Schwartz is very much in favour of this.
Yep.
They have 1 million followers on their website.
Right. Yep.
This competition is going to be a prize of £10,000.
Right.
7,000 for people aged 21 and over.
Yep.
2,000 from 14 to 21, and £1,000 prize for people under 14. A very simple competition in the sense that you only have you have to explain who the 7 people on the vase are, who made the vase, when it was made, in your opinion, and why it was made.
Right.
And we're going to set up a judging panel of experts. We hope perhaps Mary Beard might be somebody who we can approach, but certainly people from the glass industry. And your name has been circled as a possible judge of the entries. We've said to Corning they would have to sort of cut their response down to the best 50 that they judge suitable. We were sorry, best 20. We will have a total of 50, and then from that 50, try and pick the winners. It will be announced. I'm going to be in Geneva as well. I hope the UN will also announce this, because it is we decided it wouldn't be just British, because the Corning Museum have the best second copy, which was made in Stourbridge, of the Portland vase by Northwood and Philip Pargeter, John Northwood.
Yep.
And of course, it was found in Rome in an emperor's tomb. So that's Italy included. So we thought, well, we can't really exclude any nationality, providing they follow the rules and they get an official entry form, different colours for each category of entrance.
Yeah.
It's something which we hope will inspire children, even children of 6 or 7, to go on the website of the British Museum, look at the Portland vase, and come up with ideas of who those figures can be. And we think it would really capture the imagination and be a great educational tool, as well as a useful cash prize for the winners.
Yeah, that sounds a fantastic idea.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
You talked at the last meeting about the UN measuring this. Would you like just to share that with you?
Oh, right, you're thinking of the regional committee meeting. At the end of the year, we don't have a form to fill in, but we do have to produce a report. So therefore, it's important that groups like yours do type your events into our website, because that's our source of information. It's giving us a list. It's not very onerous, but one of the interesting things is that the question we ask is, how many anticipated visitors do you have for your event? And already we have something like 10 or 20 things in the UK that are happening. I added up how many anticipated visitors those 10 or 20 events were going to attract. And I got you to guess, didn't I?
Yes.
Okay. You did get it a bit wrong, yeah. I have to say that. Actually, I think it was it 10? Was it just 10? How many anticipated visitors do you think there were for 10 events? Yeah, it's quite optimistic, isn't it, to 2.5?
Add a couple of notes or so.
Yeah, any other guesses?
These are attendees. They're not like
But these are people involved in the event.
Could be the thing.
Yeah. 2,500, do you think that's a good guess? Well, shall I tell you, it was 300,000. This is the size of the audience that's being involved in this kind of thing. The reason why it was so large was not because people were being unrealistic. It was because one of the items, which I need to explore, was something at the Chelsea Flower Show. There's a garden that's going to be, that's written themselves down on our website. And they had a very large number. So although we tend to think that no one knows about this event, it's getting out there, this information, and it's going to affect a lot of people if we can get the right events. Yes.
The number of kids on this, because that must be attended.
Yeah, okay. Yes, I need to find out about that.
Will you explain the last question?
Sorry. Yes, I know how to do it, but it's whether you have to set it up in the first place. That's the problem.
So at the beginning of your lecture, you referred to the International Year of Light.
Yes.
5 years ago, or whatever it was.
10.
I don't remember that.
No.
And I just wonder, do they succeed in getting, I don't know quite what the objectives would be of the International Year of Light anyway. But are you looking to see what international years have been successful and why, and how we can perhaps replicate that and learn the best information from that?
We have spoken a lot to the 2015 people, and their reaction is that it was, from their point of view, an incredible success, because it resulted in events like this and people talking and thinking about novel ways of doing things. And they said it's gone on it's continued year after year since. And what they've been doing is actually to organize not a UN event, but a year of, or a day of light event, I think every year. Well, yeah, light, yes, okay, yeah, right. But so, you know, they're still working on it. It's has a long-term effect.
Thank you.
Yes.
I wonder if I could call on a past student of yours, a
Oh,
member
right.
of our court, and the president of British Glass to propose a vote of thanks. Sorry, Matthew Dent. I didn't say.
Thank you. Okay. Am I all right to stand up here? Right. Well, John, yes, indeed. Good evening, everybody else. Good evening. And thank you, Emeritus Professor John Parker, my ex-tutor when I was...
Yes, I remember you. Yep, I do remember.
Some considerable time ago, for some quality education and diverse and entertaining tour of the world of glass, past, present and future, illustrating how glass conforms to the United Nations Humanitarian Agenda. We are indeed living in an age of glass. You've convinced us not only that glass conforms, but that many of the humanitarian agenda items could have been written for glass itself. And indeed you've excited people of our age. So, thank you. Even the vitrophiles, us vitrophiles in the glass cellars, were surprised and delighted by some of the wonderful applications that you've shown us this evening, and enlightened as to how glass has aided modern society. And we leave this evening both spellbound and inspired. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your love of glass, and on behalf of the Worshipful Company of Glass Sellers, I wish you every success for the UN International Year of Glass. I also just need to express my pleasure and to thank all those involved in the organisation of this event this evening. Our gratitude goes to the clerk and to the backroom team for the preparation, the option to watch online or to be here in person, and to thank those from Middle Temple, especially Judge Philip Shorrock, for allowing us to use this magnificent building and for the hospitality that we're soon to enjoy. And lastly, to thank everyone for attending, for engaging, and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Matthew.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I invite you to join John in the next room and have a glass of wine. And I say a glass of wine, you could have a Cinnamon, but we prefer to serve it. If you would like to follow the beagle on the clerk next door. Thank you. Thank you very much, John. That was wonderful. I have got a little gift for you, which is